Wednesday. We are having Witchy Wednesday tonight. And so I will be talking about that in another live unless I feel moved to speak on it in this live. Currently, that's not what I'm on here to talk about. But I might feel so inclined. If I feel so inclined, I'll flow that way, right? I got to keep it fresh like the river, you know? But I came on here because I cannot even remember what I was watching, but I was watching a documentary or a news report or something of that nature. And a woman had decided to divorce her husband. And so I was watching that, and then the Kimora Lee Simmons thing happened. And then something else had happened along those lines. I can't remember what the other thing was, but I don't need to know the specifics to make my point. Because what I want to speak about was something that happened to me, or that has happened to me on more than one occasion. So I was watching something. Was it Selling? It may have been Selling Sunset or one of those kinds of shows. No, it wasn't. I was watching a rerun of Selling Tampa. That's what it was. Because I was like, it was a black lady. So I was watching a rerun of Selling Tampa. And there is a scene in that show where a woman, I don't remember their names. I wasn't a big fan of the show, even though I liked it, where a woman decides to divorce her husband. And she announced the fact that they had been separated for some months and that they were going to get a divorce. And when she announced it, all of the other women in the office started crying. And I was watching it with my daughter, one of my daughters that's an adult, and I said, "That don't do that to people. Like once you have decided that you want to divorce someone, or once you have decided that you want to leave a relationship, I think that it is wrong for the people that you tell to try to act like that's a big tragedy, to cry." Sorry, guys, you got disconnected. If I have to remake this, then I'll make it. But when my close friends come to me and say that they're going to end a relationship, right? Then I always say, okay, how are we feeling about that? Are we feeling good? Are we feeling sad? And I base what I say on how they say they're feeling about it. You know what I mean? So if they say, oh, it's rough right now, it's difficult, but I know ultimately this is the best decision for me, then I say, right, be strong, do your thing, do what you got to do. If they say, I don't know, I'm still not sure whether or not we should try to work it out. I'm not completely sure if breaking up is the right thing to do. Then I'm gonna say, oh, well, y'all considered any couples counseling? What type of measures have y'all taken to try to keep it together? I'm going to go by whatever temperature they give me for their relationship. That's what I'm going to go by. Because if one of my friends comes and tells me that she's divorcing somebody, and I break down crying as though it is tearing up my heart and my soul, that's going to make her feel bad about divorcing somebody. And let me just explain to you that when you have decided to divorce somebody, you are already feeling bad. You are already feeling bad, right? So you don't need anybody else's bad feelings. You don't need anybody. To me, if I call you up and say, "Girl, I'm about to divorce this man," I don't need your guilt. I don't need that. And as a matter of fact, if you are my actual friend, that should be the last thing that you're trying to place on me is your guilt about a situation that you weren't in, right? Okay. So that's where I'm coming from with this. But as I watched that rerun of Selling Tampa, and then I saw the Kimora Lee Simmons. I actually saw Kimora when she first went live because I follow her. I am, loosely a fan. I made sure I had a baby fat bag back in the day. I used to like how she always incorporated a lot of women of color. Kimora was one of the first people to do that. So I'm going to give her props. I know that she is problematic, but I'm not going to not give her props. I know that she is biracial and she has not always, to me, been as much of an ally to black women as I would have liked to see her be. However, I'm always going to give her props because she was one of the first major designers to make sure that women of all shades and all shapes and sizes were in her fashion shows, were walking her runways. Kimora was one of the first people to do that. We had not seen that before Kimora. So because of that, I had me a little baby fat bag back in the day. I had me some little baby fat jeans. I supported her because I saw her out here trying to make sure that black models could work. And so I supported her. Back in my day, there would be two or three black models, and that would be it. There wasn't room enough for anybody else. And so when designers went out of their way to request more black models, that's important. That gives those people work. So I really saw her as groundbreaking in that way. So all of that to say, I follow her on Instagram, and so I saw her when she went live and began to talk about what was going on with her asshole of an ex. And so as I was listening to her and just her story, and then the baby went live, their child, and the baby was crying and upset and everything, and I am 53 years old. So a 23-year-old little girl is a baby to me. I am not saying that to take away from the fact that she is a grown woman, but as a Southern black 53-year-old auntie, I will call that a baby, right? And I take my auntie status seriously. I love being called auntie. I love it when people say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I love for you to get the door for me. I love for you to ask to carry my groceries. I'm happily an auntie to the babies. And so when the baby got on there and started crying and sharing the text messages and all of that, to be quite honest with you guys, it was so familiar and so relatable. And what it brought to my mind was when you, as a black woman, that's who I'm always speaking for, because that's the body that I'm living in this lifetime, and prayerfully all of the rest of the lifetime. This is the body for me. But anyway, when you as a black woman step forward in any circle and say that you want to get a divorce, that you want to divorce your partner, there is always backlash. Somebody always has something to say. And for me, the people who had the most to say every time that I stepped up and said, I want to get a divorce, were my Christian family members. And oh my God, they heaped so much shame upon me for, you know, when I would tell them the reasons that I was leaving. No reason that I gave them was ever good enough. My first husband was horribly physically abusive. The amount of times that the police had to be called to our house, at least once a week, I had to call the police. And I was calling the police because I was in fear for my life and the life of the lives of my children. And when I said I was going to divorce that man, that horribly abusive man, th- can you imagine that there was backlash? It's wild to me that there was backlash when my family had to on more than one occasion come and rescue me from this man. I remember one day, I don't remember how it happened, but he put me and our two babies, one who was barely walking and one who could not walk, out, put us outside in the snow and locked us out of the house and had taken my keys. And so I had to take the baby carrier and hold the other baby and walk down the street to the payphone. I didn't have on any outside clothes. He had put us out in our inside clothes, me and the children. He put us out in the snow. And I had to walk to the payphone. I didn't have any money, so my purse was in the house. But in those days, you could call the police on the payphone for free. So I called the police so that they could come and get us back in the house. And they arrested him because, you can't put women and children out in the snow. And after they arrested him, they suggested, for me to go stay somewhere else for the night. And so that was an occasion that I can remember having to call my family to come and rescue me. And that's just one occasion that I remember. But on many occasions, my family had to come and rescue me from this person. But when I said I want to divorce this person, there was so much backlash. And what I had been for decades reading as backlash, as I watched Kimora Lee Simmons and as I watched that scene from Selling Tampa, I realized that backlash was shaming. It was people trying to shame me into staying in abusive relationships. And I was like, ooh, I want to go live and talk about this because it blew my mind. And so much of Christian rhetoric, Abrahamic rhetoric, which has become like the word of the black community, right? We have taken that on lock, stock, and barrel, and it has become our talking points, the Christian and the Abrahamic, tradition and their beliefs. So much of that is about shaming women to stay with horrible men. And it dawned on me today that that's what was happening to me. So when I said, when I was in the first marriage and the person was horribly physically abusive, literally the response that I got from family members was, well, he didn't ever put any marks on you. And that comes from the Bible. You know that the Bible says if he is only beating you with a stick that is the size of his thumb, that's where the rule of thumb comes from. If the stick that he's beating you with is only the size of his thumb and no bigger, then you don't have a reason to leave him. And I know that we've heard these kinds of things tossed around. And so we are somewhat desensitized to it. But living in the body of me as a black woman, a southern black country girl that was taught to love God and love Jesus and do what the Bible said and be welcoming and sweet and what would the word be, nurturing and a caretaker for your husband. My first husband, he worked in some kind of welding factory. And so when he would come home from work, I would have his bath water drawn and his food would be on the table and the kids would be, getting ready to fall asleep so that the children wouldn't bother him in the night. And if he wanted me to, I would bathe him and then, make sure that he had his food and he could say goodnight to his children. And then we were supposed to have sex and then he was supposed to go to sleep. That's how I was raised. That's what it means to be a wife in the context in which I was raised. And I was raised to believe that if I was a wife in that context, then my reward was to, have a good husband who took care of me and my children and who was kind and loving and made sure that we had everything that we needed. So that's how I was raised. So if you think about the fact that in that Bible there's a rule of thumb that says that as long as he is not beating you with something that is bigger than his thumb, it's okay for him to beat you. And we often speak about this, to me, from a masculine perspective. But I want to today consider it from the perspective of the person who is being beaten. Because even though I was the person who was being beaten, I don't think I've ever taken the time to think about what that means to me. I don't think I took the time to think about what that means to me. The fact that According to the Bible, God says it's okay for this person to beat me as long as the stick is no bigger than his thumb. What does that mean to me? What does that mean that God thinks about me? How much value does that God place on me? What does my body mean to that God? What is my body for? What is my life for? If I am beaten to death with a stick that is not any bigger than my husband's thumb, that God says that that's okay. That's okay. My life isn't worth more than a stick that's not as big as my husband's thumb. These were the realizations that I was coming to, right? After watching these two stories and having the emotions come up that I felt about those two stories. And I'd never looked at it like this. And so when I said I'm going to leave this person, everyone around me, their cultural context put them in a mindset that made them shame me. And what they told me was, stop calling the police. It's you calling the police on him that's causing all of these problems. Stop calling the police. They said, well, he's not ever leaving any marks on you. So he's not even beating you that bad. And I'm not making any of this up. I'm telling y'all verbatim what was said to me by family members. I was a little girl. I was 20 years old. I was 21 years old when I divorced that man. So when people were telling me he's not leaving any marks on you, when people were telling me he's not beating you that bad, when people were saying stop calling the police, I was a little girl. I was 20 years old. And that was their advice to me. So when I flipped it, I had to look at it from my perspective. You are trying to shame me into staying in a position where I live in fear for my life. But what you're telling me is that that is more important. The position of wife is more important than my life. Y'all don't hear me though. Amen, sunshine. Y'all don't hear me. The position of wife was more important to my family because I did not discuss it with his family. Everyone that I talked to were members of my family. And the position of wife was more important to members of my family than their daughter's life, than their cousin's life, than their niece's life. For me to be a wife was more important than for me to be alive. That, to this day, is chilling. When I thought about it, I literally got chills. Right? That's chilling. And it's terrifying. And it's heinous. It's horrible. It is a trauma just to be valued that little. And these things were said to me by the people who I thought loved me, by people who had sacrificed for me so that I could have a good middle class black upbringing. These were the people who had sacrificed so that I could have that. And so I thought I meant something to them. But for me to remain his wife was more important to them than my actual life, than my actual safety and well-being. He didn't beat you that bad. I don't see any marks on you. Stop calling the police. That's what I was told. Right? So then I praise my Ori. I praise Obatala. I praise my ancestral mothers for the fact that I am hard-headed as hell. I'm hard-headed and I'm headstrong. That's what we call it in the country where I'm from. And what that means is that when I think something, I stick with it, right? And when I want to do something, I do it. That's what that means. That's what those things mean for you all who may not be familiar with those terms. So I'm hard headed. In the Caribbean, they call it hard ears. That's me. I'm hard ears, I'm hard headed, and I'm headstrong. And I praise my Ori for being hard. Because even though the people who meant the most to me tried to shame me into staying in that relationship, I left. I did divorce that person. I did leave. And by the time I left, I had 2 children under the age of 4. And I was still a college student at the illustrious Fisk University. And I went on to get my degree on the dean's list, cum laude. And I was on my way to graduate school. I met the second husband. And the second husband, was a bit more tricky. He didn't ever put his hands on me in that kind of way. I was not hit in that relationship. But the second husband was, that was a different kind of abuse. And when after I had been in that relationship for 10 years, and I was able to recognize that I had been being abused still, and I decided to leave that relationship, I knew not to tell them people, right? So I didn't even tell anybody until the divorce proceedings were already underway. And so this will not come as a shock to you. But of course, everybody said, you should stay in that relationship. He's a good man. And we have a sound bite that's going around right now from Waiting to Exhale. He's a good man, Savannah, a good man. He's just in a bad situation. And that was what I got. He's a good man. He has accepted 2 children that were not his. He is a babalawo. He has 2 degrees. He works more than one job so that you can stay at home and be a housewife and a stay-at-home mom. He's a good man. And what that statement meant was he does not have to meet any of your demands. He does not have to grant any of your wishes. He does not have to keep you satisfied in any way. He does not have to even be kind and considerate to you. He does not have to do any of those things. He is what that meant was he's doing you a favor by being with you. That's what that statement meant. When people said he's a good man and you shouldn't worry about all those other things. I was at a function one time because myself and that particular husband, we were the spiritual head of the African-centered community in the city that we lived in. And once we divorced, I was still going to those African-centered functions because that was all that I had known. It's what I had done since my family. I stopped being close to my family when they thought it was a bad idea for me to leave the nigga that was kicking my ass. And so the Afrocentric community became my family. And so even though I knew that everyone would be disappointed that I was divorcing this person, I did not think initially, I was too naive to understand that they wouldn't continue to be my family. So I was at a function, and it was an African drum and dance function. And even though I danced, I was not dancing that day. I was in the audience. And one of the drummers stood up and he talked about how there was like an evil spirit in our African centered community. And the way he knew that there was an evil spirit in our African centered community was because I had asked that person for a divorce. because I didn't like the way he talked to me. And that's literally what he did on stage while I was in the audience. That's literally what happened. And so I had a family that I was born into that I knew wasn't going to be supportive of me getting a divorce. And then I had the family that I had chosen that I knew would have an issue with it, but I never dreamed that they wouldn't support me. And again, I went through cycles of people trying to shame me into staying in a place where I was being hurt, where I was being harmed. And like I said, it didn't dawn on me that that was a shaming until a couple of days ago. They were trying to shame me into staying. And so I had to think more deeply about this. I had to think more deeply about this and place it fully in context. As y'all know, I always gotta analyze stuff. Oh, look at the little babies on their four wheelers. Drive it out, babies. I love to see the little black boys and brown boys having fun down here in Florida. But I had to analyze it deeper. And I was like, how terrible of a group must you be that there is an entire dogma created around shaming people to stay with you. There is a whole religious philosophy based on shaming people into staying with you. How terrible must you be? And at no point does anybody say, if you are so terrible that people have to be shamed into staying with you, you need to change. You need to become a better partner. Nobody says that. What they say is accept this shame and stay there and continue to be hurt. That's wild as hell to me. And I'm in my mind, I'm just now putting all these pieces together, but ain't that wild as hell? That's wild as hell. That there's a whole segment of society, and everybody knows initially she's going to want to be around this person. It's going to be all good. It's going to be sweet candy, lotus blossoms, and cowrie shells. But there's going to come a point when this person's true character is going to make them so reprehensible that the only way to make her stay will be for us to shame her. That's wild. That's wild. And nobody ever says, so let's make the character less reprehensible. Let's be sweet and kind to people. Let's treat people like human beings. That's the conversation I find myself having with my teenage son, when we talk about, the little girls he likes or the people he's interested in or whatever. I remind him, girls are human beings. They they are beings that are going to sexually attract you, but that's not what they exist for. And if you want a girl to actually like you, the way to achieve that is by treating her like a human being. If you want a girl to stay with you, the way to achieve that is to continue to treat her like a human being and to assume that she wants the same type of treatment that you want. I have to drill this into my son's head day after day after day, because nobody else is going to tell him that. That's not going to come from any other source, right? And I don't expect it to, right? Hopefully I'm not as naive as I was during all of these stories that I'm telling y'all, the retellings that I'm telling y'all right now. But isn't that wild? Isn't it wild that we might go out? There's a point right here when we get in my neighborhood where the internet goes out. So it may go out. But it every married or her good friend or something comes so rare. That's not wild. And it's not People try to put it in a weird context. Every relationship has its ups and downs. I mean, of course, and you ain't gonna never agree with everything that nobody does. Of course, but that ain't what we talking about, is it? That ain't what this conversation is based upon. It's wild that we have set up complete societies and social norms, I guess is what I'm trying to say, based on shaming you into staying with someone who's abusing you, as opposed to setting up a social norm of not abusing people. Let's not abuse people, right? Let's if we feel the urge to abuse somebody, let's have a social norm that teaches people how to, discharge their emotions, that teaches people how to think differently, that teaches. We don't have a social norm around that. We know that the abuse is coming. And so the social norm is to make me okay with the abuse. That makes me sad, right? It makes me sad for my younger self. I mean, I'm here, I survived, blah, 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 right? But it makes me very sad for my younger self. There were two people, and every Mother's Day, even though they're not my mothers, I thank them for for those words, because they saved my life. But outside of my friend group was very supportive. There were only two other people who said, "You do not have to stay, and you can come and live with me." There were two people. And every Mother's Day, I say, "Thank you." That is the mothering that I needed in that moment, right? But everyone else in my world was speaking on behalf of him. And that's in my world, in my family. I'm not talking about his family. But in my family, everyone was speaking on his behalf, because we knew the abuse was coming. And so our ammunition and our weapon against the abuse was to shame you into staying there and taking it. Yeah, that's raggedy as hell. Raggedy as hell. Right? And then we wonder why everything. Don't we? We wonder why Black women don't feel safe. We wonder why Black women seem to be angry. We wonder why Black women seem to be defensive. We wonder why Black women become the woman that I am now, which is a woman who takes care of everything by herself and very rarely enters into a long-term relationship, because number one, because I'm terrified, but number two, because I don't have the mental capacity to tolerate any more bullshit. I'm 53 years old. I'm not tolerating no more bullshit. I've been tolerating bullshit since the day I was born. Those are my relationships. Those are my actual relationships. But I watched my mother tolerate bullshit. I watched my grandmothers tolerate bullshit. I watched my older sisters and my cousins and my aunties tolerate bullshit. So when I say I've been tolerating bullshit from men since the day I was born, I mean that exactly. And so I don't have any more tolerance for it. So very rarely are you going to see me in a long-term relationship, because I don't have tolerance for it. I'm not going to play any games, and I've created a life in which I can do everything for myself, right? And people wonder, why do Black women do that? You know why. You know why. I hate that question. I hate that question. Why are Black women so defensive? Because y'all are always lashing out at us. Why do Black women act like nobody's going to do anything for them? Because nobody has. Why do Black women feel unsafe? Because y'all are always attacking us and nobody's protecting us. Right? I hate the questions, because the question to me, are you just picking? You being mean when you ask the question, because you already know the answer to it. right? If you're not a black girl, you sat in school with black girls and you assaulted by teachers. Y'all have heard me talk about how I was assaulted by my third grade teacher in the middle of class. Physically assaulted. Every other child in that classroom saw that. It was two black girls in the class. I was the first member of my family to go to an integrated school. So it wasn't but two black girls in the class. It was me and another girl. So all those white kids saw me get physically assaulted. But then they gonna turn around and ask, why black women so defensive? Maybe because teachers are beating us up, right? My whole family. Okay. Yeah, let me know if y'all can hear me. Because for some reason the internet went out. But yeah, y'all know I hate questions. The questions are an attack because you already know the answer to the question. You know why I take care of everything myself. When I meet a black woman in my age group, 53, in our 50s and 60s, and she takes care of everything herself, I know why she did. I don't have to ask. I don't have to ask. The asking is an attack because I know why. I know why my mama did it. I know why my aunties did it before they remarried. I know why my older sisters did it. It's going in and out. Is it still going in and out, D? Okay. Thank you for letting me know, D. But what I was saying was the question itself is an attack. Why are black women so defensive? Because people are attacking us. Why you take care of everything by yourself? Because I'm terrified of asking another motherfucker to come in here and help me, and then his ass gonna turn around and say it's my house, and so I get to do what the fuck I want in here. And when a man says this is my house, what he means is so I can abuse you in here. That's what that statement means. A man doesn't ever have to say this is my house unless you're saying, can you please stop doing that? And his response is to turn around and say, this is my house. I do whatever I want to in here. That's what that means. So you ask a black woman why she take care of it. You know why she does it. Why little black girls always look so mean? Because we scared as fuck. Because motherfuckers keep attacking us and nobody protects us. Everybody knows the answers. So the questions themselves are an attack. And we know that that's true. Right, D Wade. Proudly talking about, yeah, I was up in Miami and I told her this was my house. And that would have been the last thing he ever said to me. He wouldn't have had to say shit else to me. Oh, it's your house? Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. Shouldn't have been up in here. Thought it was our house. But now that I'm clear that it's your house, let me get my shit and go. And have done it. And we'll do it again. Ain't nobody finna sit up and tell me this is my house. There's only one reason that somebody says that. The reason that somebody says this is my house is because they're abusing you and you're asking them to stop. And they're saying, it's my house. I pay for everything in here and I get to do what the fuck I want in here, including abusing you. That's what that statement means. But yeah. Child! Now see, you ain't saying nothing but the truth. Sin Mitch, you ain't saying nothing but the truth. I too have been in a situation where somebody tried to tell me that my house was their house and they was gonna do whatever they wanted to in it. And it did not end well for them. It did not end well. They, at the end of the night, they had to limp off to their mama's house. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I ain't nothing nice. I ain't nothing nice. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm not apologizing for it, but that's all we gonna say, cause motherfuckers gonna be like, yeah, Lasha was on there condoning violence. So I ain't gonna say shit, but I am gonna say when a motherfucker told me that my house was his house, yeah, he ain't never say that shit again. ever. But yeah, I think that it's important for us to consider how the traumas of our past have shaped us. It's essential for us to go back and get the full brunt of what it felt like, right? If you're not understanding the full brunt of it, then there's no way for you to realistically heal from it or handle it, right? So as I went back to my 20-year-old self and I took the full brunt of what those statements meant to me, he must not be hitting you that hard. See any marks? Okay. So you would like for him to hit me harder. I can only leave him if he's hitting me harder. Do you see that? And this is what my family said to me. So we got to go back and get that full brunt. And that will help us to understand most of the things that we've done since then, right? But not only that, it helps us to be very clear about the position that we hold in our community and in the world at large. And I like to be clear on that. I like to call a thing, because if I'm honest and realistic about what I'm looking at, then I can be honest and realistic about my response. If I'm being delusional and deluding myself and pretending that I'm looking at something different, then my response is not going to be at the level that it should be. So, this is parlaying into talking about tonight as we come to this point. So, I'm going to go on and throw this out there. Tonight, we are moving into part 2 of my Fiery Wall of Protection series. The Fiery Wall of Protection series is where I teach you my personal juju for staying out of narcissistic and abusive relationships. How I keep myself out of those situations. It's my personal juju, my personal magic that I use. And tonight we are doing heart work. The first class was mirror work, where we looked within, right? Who am I? Why am I here? Tonight we're going to do heart work. And we are going to look within and speak honestly about those first times our hearts were broken. You are never going to be free of your addiction to narcissists and abusers until you figure out why they are so irresistible to you. And so that is what my class is for. It's to help you figure out what part of that narcissism and abuse you are so magnetized to, you are so attracted to, you can't get enough of, and why. Why are you attracted to it? Why can't you get enough of it? Once you know that, you'll be able to recognize when you are acting in that attraction, and you'll be able to act accordingly, move yourself accordingly, and fine tune your actions and modify your actions accordingly. All right? So tonight is heart work in the Fiery Wall of Protection series, right? This is the second class. Today is also the summer solstice. So it is the longest day of the year. Summertime is my favorite time of the year, always has been. I love me some good old hot weather, and everything that comes with hot weather, I love. So this is the longest day of the year. This is the day of the year when the light has triumphed over the darkness, right? And we know that one is not better than the other. We're not Christian. We don't think that light is better than darkness, but we know that each one has to have its moment in the universe. So the summer solstice is the time of the light, is the moment of the light in the universe. I speak more about this in my book, and I'm going to put the links to the class, and I'll put the link to the new books in the description once I'm done. But I do teach you more about those solstices and the dance of Earth Mother Onile through the cosmos and how you use this in your magical work in my book, The Grimoire of the Black Witch. which dropped like about a week ago. You can find it on Amazon, and I will put a link in this video once I am done. All right, I'm going to go in here and prepare myself for the class that I'm going to teach tonight. Heart work. Where and when was your heart broken? And how does that contribute to your attraction to narcissists and abusers? And what in the world can you do to stop being so attractive? That's what we're going to work on tonight. Hope to see you there. Whether or not I see you there, I hope that you got what you needed from this video. And I want you to know I share moments like this because I want the other little girls that are out there in crazy ass relationships to know that they're not crazy. That's why I share stuff like this, so that they'll know that they're not crazy, so that they'll know to believe their ears and to believe their eyes and to believe their feelings and their body to respond to things. So that's why I share these types of things. So whether or not you agree with, oh, that's not what I mean to say. Whether or not you're going to take the class tonight, please like and share the video. Please comment. Please tell me your thoughts. If you are going to take the class tonight, I will see you at 8:30, and we're going to talk about this hard space and how to heal it by dealing first with the first time that it was broken. And we are going to continue to build up our fiery wall of protection against narcissism and abuse. All right, I love you guys. Let me go in here and get to prepping ecstasy, abundance, and bliss, and all of the gifts of Oshun upon anyone within the sound of my voice who is wishing the same for me and mine. And as always, we wish the lessons of life upon the assholes who are ignorant enough to wish us otherwise. Y'all have a good night. I hope to see you at 8:30.